here with another left-hand review, and today we're going to look at one of my favorite Euros, Goa. Goa was released in 2004. This was the Rio Grande version by a designer by the name of Rudiger Dorn. I apologize if I said that wrong. It surrounds the spice trade between Portugal and India in the 1500s. Plays in about 2 hours, 2 to 4 players. And this is, I would classify, a medium Euro. It's relatively simple mechanics, but there's a lot going on. So let's take a look at it. So let's take a look at what you get in the box. So first of all, we have the board here. This is a little cheat sheet printed off of Board Game Geek. It is almost a must-have. It helps you keep track of all the different phases of the turn, and we'll get into that in a minute. I also print out some great player aids here from Board Game Geek. Again, it really makes the game much easier for beginner players to pick up. And each player has 2 different player boards. They have this board here in each of the player colors that holds their plantations and their settlements. And each player also gets one of these boards that shows their upgrade track. So it shows all the different things that they can upgrade, and I'll go through these in a minute. Another cheat sheet of all the different tiles in the game. And a Plano box that has all the components in it. So you can see we have a lot of different cards here, some different player bidding tokens, because this isn't an auction-based game. All our different spices, there are 5 different spices. And the different tiles for the game. So now let me set up a game and I'll run you through how it works. So here's the basic setup of a typical game of Goa. At the top here we have all our spices. Now the various spices that we have are ginger, pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. So if that isn't obscure in board gaming, I don't know what is. Down here we have the board, and off to the side we have the player mats, which I'll get to in a minute. Now basically on the board here we have the money supply here, which is in cards, which I know makes maybe some of you cringe, but it really does make keeping your money secret, since the backs are all the same. We also have the additional tiles up here. This is the A tile discard pile and the new B tiles. Basically the game is divided into 2 parts, part A and part B. So we used all the A tiles here, and then after 4 rounds in part A, the remaining A tiles are removed and B tiles are placed out, and you do 4 rounds with the B tiles and the game is over. Up here we have our colony tiles, additional action cards here, colonist cards in denominations of 1 and 3, ship cards in denominations of 1 and 3, and the expedition cards down here at the bottom. So the first thing that happens is the placing of the auction markers. So each player on their player board has 5 auction markers, so I'm going to assume a 4-player game where you use all 5 auction markers. And what you do is the starting player takes the start player marker here, the start player flag, and places that anywhere adjacent to a existing tile. It has to be placed orthogonally. So in this case, let's say they would place it here. And they would place their bidding marker, their number 1 bidding marker, onto the flag to indicate that they were the one that placed it. Now player 2, let's say player 2 is blue, they will place their number 2 bidding marker on a tile that is orthogonally or diagonally from the number 1 token, bidding token. So they could place here, here, or here. So let's say here. Then player 3, let's say player 3 is green, will take their number 3 bidding token and place it orthogonally or diagonally from the number 2 token. Then player 4. And finally, the first player again gets to place the final bidding marker. Now that ends the placement of the bidding tokens, and now auctions begin, starting with the first player. they become the auctioneer for the start player flag. The start player flag also has this additional action symbol in the top left hand corner, which means not only do you get to go first next round in the placing of the auction markers, but you also get an additional action card as well. So the auctioneer, the red player, will start by bidding 0, and each player has one and only one chance to bid, and they are bidding money. So the winner of that, it ends with the auctioneer. They get the final bid. Whoever wins takes the first player flag. They return the bidding token back to their board, and they take an additional action card as the benefit for that. Then it moves to the number 2 auction, and now the blue player becomes the auctioneer. So they start with a bid of 0, and it goes around, and they get the final bid, or obviously to pass. The winning player takes the tile, and in this case, this tile says they can get either 3 ships or 3 colonists immediately. So they may choose, okay, I want 3 ships, so this would get discarded here, and they would take 3 ships. And then we would go through 3, 4, and 5 in the same way, and these would get removed from the board, of course. And then after the rest of this whole round was completed, bidding would start again with the player with the start player flag placing the flag next to another tile, and it goes from there. Now, what do each one of these tiles do? Well, I won't go through all of them, but there are several of these blue ones that have instantaneous actions. You have the red ones, which are highly sought after because they happen each round. It says at the bottom of the tile, take each round. So each round that you have this card, you get to take 1 ship card. Very useful. And then you have the plantation tiles here. So this is a pepper plantation. It allows you to grow 1 pepper plant, and it also counts as 1 victory point at the end of the game. As opposed to this pepper plantation allows 2 pepper plants, but it has no victory points, no value at the end of the game. Then you also kind of have these bonus purple tiles. This one just says if you cash in 6 spices, you get 4 victory points. So at some point during the remainder of the game that you have this tile, you cash in 4, flip this over to indicate that you've done that, and it'll be worth 4 points. So after you get all the tiles, then you start the action phase. In the action phase, each player gets 3 actions, 1 at a time, and then any additional actions that people can take can be taken, and that's from collecting those additional action cards. So let's take a look at the player boards and the various actions that you can take. So earlier when we were talking about the auctions, let's say you won an auction for a clove plantation. So that clove plantation would go here onto one of the plantation spaces, and you would immediately fill it with 2 cloves. So keep that in mind. Also, you can obtain colonies, which also allow you to grow various spices, but I'll get into that in a minute. Here is the main player board here. It reminds me a lot of Endeavor because you are upgrading. It's almost like an upgrade track. So the first action that you can take is to develop, and that means moving your development cube here down on one of these tracks, and that increases each of the tracks. So in order to do that, you can see there is a spice cost here, and for each spice that you have to pay, you also have to pay 1 ship card to ship that spice. So let's say I wanted to upgrade this track here. It would cost me 1 clove and 1 ship. So I would take a ship, I would spend a clove from my clove plantation, those would go back to the general supply, and I would move this down. So that's the develop action. Next we have shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is how you obtain more ship cards, and that is indicated by this track here. So if I choose to do shipbuilding, I take the number of ship cards corresponding to the level that this development cube is at. So if it was here and I choose to do shipbuilding, I take 3 shipbuilding cards. Next we have harvesting. Harvesting action has to do with this line of upgrades. And you would take from the supply this number of spices. So if I was here, I would take 2 spices from the general supply. Now, of course, you can only take spices from the general supply that you have room for on your plantations or on your colonies. So in this case, I only have a clove plantation, so I would only be able to take cloves, and I only have room for 1, so I would not be able to take both. The next action is taxation. Taxation is how you get money. So you can see the values here. So if this cube was here on my taxation track, I would be able to take 10 ducats from the bank. Ducats, of course, are very important because that is what you use for the auctions. The next action is taking an expedition. That's what allows you to draw additional expedition cards. The number on the left here is the number that you draw, and the number on the right is the maximum hand limit size, which you can never exceed. So if the cube was here, I would draw up to 2 cards, and I could not have any more than 3 cards. If I already had, say, 3 cards in my hand, I would have to use 2 of those cards in order to draw 2 additional cards. So the final action you can take is founding a colony. So I mentioned the colonies earlier. There's 4 different ones. They're similar to the plantations in the respect that they produce spices, but they are a little bit special. So the first colony here is Quillian, and you can see it allows for 2 different spices, the cinnamon or ginger. And each one is unique. This one is pepper and cinnamon. And so you can see they each provide 2 different spices. So what that means is if you have that particular plantation and you choose the harvest action, you can harvest either one of those spices, meaning put either one of those spices onto that colony. And then when you subsequently use that spice, you can harvest again and you can do the same spice or a different spice. Cochin here is a wild, so it allows 1 of any spice. Madras is similar to Quillian except for it provides 2. So there's 2 different types. You can see, and each one of these is different. And then finally, Calcut at the end is 2 wilds. Now each one of these gets subsequently more expensive. And essentially what you have to pay are colonists. So the first, the Quillian colony costs 6 colonists, then 8 colonists, 10 colonists, and 12 colonists. So if I want to found a colony, I first choose which colony I want to found. So let's say Cochin. So the first thing that I do is look on my player board. And right now, my marker here, my colony marker, is at the 2, meaning by default I have 2 colonists that are going to help me found this colony, so I need 6 more. The next thing that you do is you draw 2 expedition cards. 2 colonists and 2 more colonists. You ignore everything else. So now we have a total of 4 colonists there, plus the 2 colonists on my player board, for a total of 6 colonists. But I need 8. Now I just so happen to have 2 additional colonists that I had in my hand from earlier in the game. I can spend these, so I now have 8. I can take my Cochin colony, place it on the Cochin space on my player board, and immediately put a spice on it. Now, if I did not make the 8 colonists necessary, I fail at founding the colony, and I take a colonist card from the supply as a consolation prize. Also, if I choose not to found the colony, meaning I had 6 in this case, but I did not want to spend my 2 colonists, I can choose not to, and again, fail founding the colony and take a colonist card as a consolation prize. Now, colonies, you can only have 1 of each. If you decide to found another one, you must kick out one that you already have. So you can have 1 of each colony, and you can also have 4 different plantations. And that is the process of founding a colony. Now, a little bit earlier, I mentioned the expedition cards, and we just had a quick glance at them, so let's go over those a little bit more in depth. So each expedition card, which you get from the expedition action, has 3 different parts to it. You have the top part, which is the actual, the special ability that the expedition card grants you for drawing it and using it. So if I had this expedition card, I could spend it on my turn and get 5 ducats. At the bottom, it also has the colonist number, which is used only for founding the colonies, which we just showed. And that also has these special symbols. This one is a symbol of a tiger. This one is some sort of talisman. We have a fish, and so on. So at the end of the game, if you have several like symbols on your expedition cards, those are worth victory points. So it's interesting because you need to choose what you use those expedition cards for. Are you going to use them for their special ability, or are you going to try to save them for the victory points from having like symbols? And you can see them getting burned every time somebody founds a colony, and eventually they will get reshuffled. So how does scoring work? So at the end of the game, we have a very Knizia style scoring where several different things score. So the first thing is you will look on your player board, and for each space, each level that your upgrade cubes are, you score that many victory points. So this cube would score me 3 points. This cube would score me 1 point. This cube would score 6 points, and so on. So you add up all those. Then you add points for the number of colonies that you have. So if I have only 1 colony, it's worth 1 point. 2 is worth 3 points. If I have 3, it's worth 6. And if I have founded all 4 colonies by the end of the game, I get 10 victory points. Now we also count up the like symbols from those expedition cards I just mentioned. For each individual symbol, it's worth 1 point. If you have 2 like symbols, it's worth 3. 3 is 6, 4 is 10, 5 is 15, and 6 is 20. There are only 6 of each, so getting all 6 is very difficult, but it's worth 20 points. Also, 3 ducats equals 1 victory point, rounded down, of course. You count up any victory points that are on any of the tiles that are worth a victory point that you've collected throughout the game, and any of the purple tiles that have those bonus victory points. So all said and done, you add those up, and whoever has the most victory points is the winner. A typical high-scoring game is in the between 40 and 60, I would say, but I have seen it higher. So that's basically a game of Goa. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different options. They balance this game extremely well because there's always, every single turn, there is 1 more action that you need. Just that 1 additional action. It's really crazy how well balanced it is. Also, the game is not incredibly long if people don't suffer from analysis paralysis. There's only 8 total rounds for a total of 24 default actions plus any additional actions. So you need to definitely plan ahead. Know what you're going to do, know the strategies that you're going to take, and plan those ahead of time because there's a very limited number of auctions and actions each game. So overall, this is, like I said, one of my favorite Euros. There's a lot going on. It's a lot of fun. It's totally different every time you play. There's a ton of different strategies to win, many different paths to victory, and I highly recommend that you try this game out. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching.